Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to get everybody into the main webinar. Hello, good afternoon. Panelists, how you doing? Lucy?
Good, thank you. Very well.
See you. The lovely Shani, how are things?
Hey, I'm okay, thank you. I'm good, thank you.
We've got the editor-in-chief himself, Gideon. Good afternoon.
Hello.
And the godfather of outdoor, there he is. Top left on my screen this afternoon. Naren, how are you?
It makes me feel old, man.
Yeah, I keep thinking of you. That may be the wrong term to use. Sorry, I need to come up with something else. So we're just going to let everybody get into the main room, and then we will get started. I hope everyone's had a good day so far. This is where I think, Naren, we agreed we needed a little bit of hold music, didn't we?
Yeah, if I was in the other room, I could maybe get some songs on the piano, but it's pretty awful, man. It's not a good sound.
No worries. It's probably better than my singing, if I'm honest. Okay. We'll give it another 20 seconds. Okay, let's do this. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Liam from the Seven Stars, and welcome to MEFA Matters. It's in a new home this year. We're doing Thursdays once a month at 4 o'clock. And the reason for that was so many of us working from home, parenting from home, to be honest, doing everything from home. We were getting a bit of feedback that midday just wasn't working for a lot of our working parents. We know that those guys are struggling a bit at the moment. So shout out to you. We've got a record registration attendance today, which is awesome, but it also means we've got quite a lot of newbies in the house. So just thought I'd give you a bit of background. Media for All was set up in 2017 by this man, Naren Patel. And the whole aim was to really help recruit and retain people from Black, Asian and other minority ethnic communities to the advertising industry. As well as recruit and retain, we also focus on how we can help people of colour really rise within the industry. What we want is for people who join advertising to look up and see more people that look like them in positions of influence. And we know that at the moment, January 2021, that's still not the case. So we really came up with MEFA Matters last year as a way to drive that change and keep the momentum. We wanted to have a platform for open discussion and conversations, and that's what this webinar is about. So a real safe space where people can ask questions, we can have a lively debate and chat, and all of that without judgment of fear or using the wrong language, because we know we're all part of the problem in some way, so we all need to be part of the solution. We also, you see Sharon here in my bottom right. You're going to hear from Sharon later from the Ad Association. She's going to talk about a brilliant initiative that launched today called All In. She's just going to talk a bit about where they are with it and what it means for the advertising industry. But we at Media for All really, really welcome it. It seems like New Year's Eve was a couple of days ago to me, but the truth is it's pretty much already the end of January. And I personally can't believe that. It seems to have absolutely flown by. What that means is 1 month down out of 12, which is awesome. That's 8.5% of the way through the year. But what it also means is time is kind of falling through our hands. And that's what we wanted to talk about today. How can we keep the momentum up? How do we keep on keeping up? Hold each other to the account to the intentions that we made last year in good faith. So we also know, on top of the usual challenges facing the ad industry, that we're dealing with an ongoing COVID crisis. You'd have to be have your head stuck in the ground not to know that. But all the stats point to COVID disproportionately affecting people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, not just from a health perspective, but we know, unfortunately and sadly, that's the case. But redundancy, financial hardship, loads of other proven difficulties really disproportionately affect those groups. And we know that last year's commitments to support and level the playing field for people of colour in society is still falling short. And definitely we're seeing that at this time. But we did see some positives. We saw commitments in things like Adelan Commits. We saw loads of organisations getting organised and creating meaningful impact. People said they were going to listen. People said they were going to create safe spaces and publish figures. So really what we wanted to do today is really fast forward to the start of a new year and work out how we keep this really, really important thing at the top of the agenda. We want to make sure that it becomes more than a cool water cooler topic, and we need to double down on an area that, to be honest, it felt at best half-assed for too long. So that's what we're talking about today. We've got some brilliant guests from our very own publication campaign, our industry publication campaign. It's reflecting a really, truly vibrant and exciting industry. And I know, Gideon, you're doing a hell of a lot to really drive that diversity agenda, and that's brilliant to see. We've got great talent here. We've also got, as I've said, our founding father, Naren. He told me it makes him sound old, so sorry about Naren. We always talk about safeguarding. This is definitely a safe space, but we know sometimes we get into topics that are a little bit difficult. So if anyone's triggered, needs any kind of emotional support, our friends at NABS have a brilliant advice line, and I'm going to put that in the chat box. And also, as we're going along today, if you've got any questions, definitely pop them in the Q&A bit, and we'll come back and we'll come back to those at the very end to go through that. I think that's quite enough for me. It won't be as long an intro as this in future, I promise. It's just the first one of the year. But let me introduce our panel. So we've got Lucy here. Lucy's a UK and EMEA account management team lead for Athena. She's also a MEFA member and role model, and has previously been voted one of Campaign's 30 under 30. So hello, Lucy. Thanks for joining. Hello there. We've got Gideon. I've talked about Gideon already. He's the UK editor-in-chief for our industry Bible. I know everyone still pores over that every day to look at what's going on in our world. And Gideon previously worked over at the Times and Evening Standard. We've got Shani, who's brilliant, awesome, and fearless. She's the co-founder and head of talent at the Elephant Room, and is one of management today's 35 under 35. And we've talked quite a lot about Naren, but Naren started this whole thing off and has been doing a brilliant job for many years championing this in the industry. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. As I say, if you've got questions, pop them in a Q&A, but let's start off today's show. So, Lucy, we know that last year we saw this real flurry of activity in the immediate aftermath of the death of George Floyd, and real resurgence of that BLM movement. How much of that intent remains today that you see? And, there's always that underlying worry that it was part of a bit of a 2020 thing, and this year's people are going to move on to something. What do you think about that?
So I think, first of all, the important word you've used there is intent. Now, for me, intent are essentially plans, and plans without action amount to nothing. I've seen countless remarks from business leaders who claim that there's an economic upside to investing in a diverse workforce. Now, for me, the question really is, why do we need a business case? Why do we need sound economic grounds to justify investing in diversity? Is it not enough to just do what's morally right? So I guess the question for me is anybody else worried? I'm definitely worried. I'm worried that the fact that Black lives still have and always will matter will become a tiresome subject. The eye rollers, the here we go again remarks, we need to get used to it. This is not going away, and nor should it. Dismantling systematic racism can feel like an impossible task. It's difficult, it's really difficult to discuss. These issues are deep and pervasive, and they're much bigger than any one organisation. I think our industry are suffering from the bystander effect, that feeling that this issue is bigger than them, or that someone else is going to resolve it. But how can we begin to resolve issues like, I don't know, climate control, global pandemics, even from how to win and pitch business if we don't have the best talent on board? Not only are we shooting ourselves in the foot, but we're limiting our potential to innovate and transform. It's unsustainable. It's also quite frustrating. There's studies out there. If we look back over 25 years, they discuss how to address the very same issues that we're discussing today, and very little has changed. I often reference the learning and effectiveness paradigm. It's a study that outlines why employing a more diverse workforce just in itself doesn't increase business effectiveness. Now, which essentially means employing more Black people is only addressing the tip of the iceberg. We really need to learn to challenge power relations. We need to really put some real effort into this. We need to learn how to harness differences, turn them into assets. Contributions need to be rewarded, they need to be valued, and they need to be recognised. So I guess, Liam, in answer to your question, I think we've passed the planning phase, we're past the good intention phase. It's time to start taking action and holding businesses to account.
Thanks, Lucy. And do you know what? I can totally hear a lot of what you've said there. And, the whole thing about, have a strategy, but strategy is only a piece of paper unless you go and deploy that strategy, right? And there's bigger things that people, there's smaller things that millions of people are looking at solving. This is just one of those big things that we need to get on and start doing and start making an absolute impact. Gideon, as I said earlier, Campaign has been a massive supporter of Media for All. You guys have always got our back, and I know that, as our industry publication, I'm sure you've written tons and tons about this issue. I guess, what's your role, I guess, in terms of holding us to account, and you as an industry voice, how do you help us to make sure we're committing to these changes and making them happen?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And I have thought quite hard about this before I became editor-in-chief, and definitely since. And I'm going to try and break it down for you in 6 ways. I hope you don't mind, but I think it should be simple. So first thing is, what do journalists do? We need to find out what is going on. People don't always tell us we need to go and look. But when I think about, well, how can we be more inclusive, not exclusive? How can we cover the whole of this industry and all the people who work in it? We need to talk to different people. We don't want to just do the same old, same old. So that's a key priority. Be more inclusive. And you know, I would say, in addition, watch what we do, because sometimes unintentionally in our journalism we might make microaggressions, even though we have quite a diverse team at Campaign. So look what's going on. That's the first thing, and find out what's going on. And when people don't tell you, go looking. The second thing is find success stories and celebrate excellence. I think it's really important. People are sometimes find issues around inclusion, diversity, equality. They get a bit, certainly people who, let's be honest, someone like myself, if you are coming from a position of privilege, it's not always easy to know how to navigate these things. But there are lots of people and lots of great stories out there. And I think we were very proud of this issue, which we did, which was a diversity issue, which our deputy editor, Gemma Charles, worked on with Karen Blackett, who was the contributing editor for that. That was last February. And I think there are lots of great success stories. I look at Vogue with a Black editor-in-chief and a Black publishing director. I think there's stories of companies talking about things. At the Reset conference this morning, run by the advertising trade bodies, the CEO of Money Supermarket said they'd looked at their ethnicity pay gap. They'd increased some salaries. They'd done a microaggression audit. You had Lloyds Bank disclosing that Black staff are paid nearly 20% less on average. Those kinds of stories where companies are confronting, either companies making a difference in a good way or confronting, let's be honest, historic things they just may be blind to. That's really important. A third thing, creating an inclusive platform means actually not just our journalism, but trying to bring in new voices and new faces. And I'm really pleased that Shani has written for Campaign several times. And as you mentioned, Lucy entered the Media Week 30 Under 30 and was selected. She did have a very memorable entry, which I can remember from 5 years ago now. She challenged me about the diversity of our judging panels, and we invited her to be a judge on 30 Under 30 last year, and she was great in the Zoom judging. We've tried specifically in the last 12 months when we've got called out to make our award juries more inclusive. And I like to think we have made some progress. We got some students from the Brixton Finishing School who invited them to sit in on the judging for the big awards. And just a final thing on this key point, we can amplify the voices of industry experts who can educate the marketplace, I think, about the harmful effects of negative stereotypes. And you know, that's something that people have said to me on more than one occasion. You know, we have a voice, and we can be a platform to try and really be anti-racist in challenging negative stereotypes. So you mentioned this at the start, Liam, holding companies to account. So people trust Campaign. We can ask particularly agencies. I feel we can do more with media owners as well, in asking them for information about their employee makeup. They talk a lot about culture, so let's hear what your representation is. And we have been asking more questions this year in our school report questionnaires that we send to agencies. When we did what we called a BLM Adland audit last September, we asked lots of about 30 agencies, I think, responded what they had been doing since June, since the protests after the killing of George Floyd. And one of the questions we asked was, would they disclose their ethnicity pay gap? And only one did. So we're going to go back and ask again. And, you know, I think by asking the questions, then we can get the data. And that comes on to my fifth point, which is partnering and collaborating. There are lots of people who are experts in doing really good work, and I think I could mention MEFA, Creative Equals, POC. There's this all-in census. These are all examples of where if we campaign can partner or learn from these organizations and people, I think that's really good for the industry as a whole. And the last thing, which is really important, is about if we're going to hold the industry to account, that's a privileged position, and we need to do the same for our own company. So there's a number of employee representation groups, including one called Origin at my company, Haymarket, and I'm a member of that, and we have been talking about how do we improve our record on diversity, equality and inclusion. And we are asking the company the same questions in the school report questionnaire on gender and racial diversity that we are asking the agencies. Now, we discovered that the agencies can't always answer all the questions, and I think something that may come up is the question of data. How can you collect the data? But if you don't start, you can't get anywhere. And Naren spoke to me yesterday about this new survey for across the ad industry, and he said we're crying out for data, and I think that's the thing we'll try and do too, collect data, because once you've got data, you can do just like any other KPI. You can say, okay, what's the progress year on year, and that's it.
Thanks, Gideon. Do you know what? I think we've talked about this before. So the whole data piece, and I think companies are embarrassed to disclose what their ethnicity pay gap is. And I think as long as we're talking about, having a conversation about the positive movement forward, and we've seen a lot of those metrics move backwards in the last 12 months. But as long as we're talking about what movement you've made, that's the thing I think we should be most focused on, because if we never disclose the data and never admit where we're at, we're never ever going to be able to, like you said, hold people to account and help move that forward. I think the other thing you talked about, Gideon, around celebrating the great stuff out there. I know that you guys, actively in the last 18 months have really driven that agenda in terms of going out there and finding those things. And I think, we need to encourage people to do more of that. You mentioned Shani. Shani, I'm going to come to you with a bit of a question now. I know that Lucy talked a bit about this in her response, but I think you've never been afraid to be vocal about calling it out, right? And I think you did that at the beginning of the year, which is why we really wanted to get you on this first show, which was like, people have said Adlan commits, people have put a black image on their socials to, in solidarity, but what are they actually doing? And I sense a bit of frustration creeping in. How do we start to challenge that?
I mean, yeah, I think my thing is, the reason why that frustrated me so much is because it took something so big to realize, and it's been happening for so long. So it's like, why is it like, if the question is, why isn't it happening? And I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like what Lucy said, like, you get the eye rolls and you think, oh, here we go again, or people think that it's not happening. And there's so many stats out there that prove that it is. And I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations, more often than not, they want to make some form of difference, but they are scared. So with that fear, instead of actually trying to sort of admit their wrongs, confront their mistakes, and they try and sort of cover it up with, they think that it's launching this program and then that's going to work, or getting 18 young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Oh, look what we did. But first of all, it's not charitable because we're not charity. Second of all, you're not giving anybody any favors. This is not a favorable commitment, or it's not a favor for you to bring in someone from a diverse background or an underprivileged or under-resourced background. This is something that you should be doing in order to achieve the best business metrics, and in order to be the best team, and in order to future-proof yourself as a business. It just is that. So when people do that thing where it's like, well, we've done this and we're just so proud, it's like, yeah, and amazing. You should absolutely be proud of the things that you're doing, and you should absolutely be talking about it. But what you actively should be talking about is the change that is happening whilst the things that you're doing. So whilst you are giving, how many of those 18 people have now thrived in the industry and they've continued to stay in the industry and they've been promoted? Like, what has then happened? What's what's come off the back of that. How many people have applied for, if you've had 30 people apply for this job, then it's gone up to 100 because actually your company culture has changed and people have actively gone out and said that. Has your retention improved? Like, those are the kind of things that people want to hear about, because I think at the end of the day, you can do something and it can either go right or wrong. You'll make mistakes naturally, and people will obviously be conscious to that. They'll be like, okay, I even get phone calls often to this day, okay, you worked here, what's the vibe? Because I know you went through the, like, was it kind of like back? And you know what I mean? And people talk. So I think it's more about like, yes, there are things that I could suggest that people do, but everything works different for any business, whether you're a 100-person company to a 6-person company. But you have to ask yourself, what is the change that we're trying to do? Like, what actual change and what actual influence do we have right now? Because let's be real, when the big hitters commit to things, that's when there becomes a ripple effect. Everyone else starts to sign up. So unless you see a big name on that list or a big name on that, oh, this person's talking or that person's saying it, that's when everyone else starts to chain and it becomes a chain reaction. So no matter how many some of the mid-sized companies or the smaller sized companies, no matter how much difference they're making, because the elephant room, it doesn't even matter. We've been doing stuff, but we're only 3 years old. So what? Do you know what I mean? The influence that we have on the industry in comparison to somebody else who's been in the game for like 50 plus, 60 plus years is not the same. Do you know what I mean? And we don't want to be congratulated for it either, because it's normal. And it's weird that you've been in the industry for 60 years and only decided to do it a year ago.
Yeah, I hear you, Shani. And I think it's all that. It shouldn't be an exceptional thing. It should be a standard thing that everyone does, right? It shouldn't be something that we go, oh, look at these and like, this is what we should do. I guess it's trying to get that balance. I think a couple of things you said I find really striking is that thing about people are scared or worried about getting it wrong. I think if we've talked about this before, if you're coming from a place of positivity and authenticity, overused words, right? But if you're coming from that place, can you really get it wrong? Yeah, maybe you can. My granddad's from Jamaica, but I'm still worried about saying sometimes if I could say the right language around colour or say the right language. But as long as you're coming from the right place and keen to understand more, like Gideon was saying, I think that you can't be admonished too much about getting it wrong as long as you're willing to move and get it right.
Exactly.
I think the thing about, it should be normal. There's so many proven benefits on what having an inclusive and team from all over the place, racially, geographically, mentally, disability wise. There's so many proven benefits of those sorts of teams. It's madness that we haven't got to that place. Commercially, there's commercial benefit. Your business will make more money if you have that kind of an approach to recruitment. And then the final thing, I don't normally talk this much, but you've got me going now, that the whole measurement piece is fundamental. Naren, we'll come to you and talk about that shortly, but like we talk about recruit, retain, rise, people progressing in a company. We wanted to do a score on each of those R's as media for all to go, great, you've got all these initiatives, brilliant, well done, but how are you moving year on year? Have you made more black hires in a boardroom? Have you done X? Have you brought in? And that's something I think we all need to get better at as an industry in terms of that measurement. So thank you for that, Shanae. Naren, you launched in 2017, I think you said. I think that's when you kicked this off.
Yeah.
I remember you telling this story. You sat at either like a Stranger in Summer or I don't think it was a Media Week thing. You looked around and you were like, there's only 2 of us here. And do you know what? To be honest, the last time I was at an industry event, it was pretty much the same. And that was probably, another 4 years on. So Tell us about your experience. Every year we go, it's going to be the year it changes. It never bloody is. So tell us about your experience around what needs to change, how we drive that, how do we drive and get to that ambition?
Thanks, Liam. I think we've got to start by at least going, we did more in 2020 than we did in the other 29 years that I've been in the industry. So I think it's terrible where we are, but let's at least go, God, we changed, right? Change is happening. This is really difficult. It's difficult thing to do, but unless we start, we'll never change. I think there's some interesting points for me. So, as you know, MEFA have got their own employee resource group committee. There's about 20 of them. I think Lucy, you're on it as well. And they had a conversation, and they were like, right, how long has everyone been on your ERG D&I group? And you know what? No one had been on one till after George Floyd. That was the first time that this happened. So that says something, but it says 2 things. One, what we're doing for the last 30 years, but it also says at least companies are doing it. I am hearing some really good stories, you know, about companies putting resource in, putting effort in, putting their backs in, and trying to make a difference. You know, you saw the article in the Drum. Sorry about Gideon. I do read the Drum as well. And it, you know, it talked about the big agency groups and a list. You know, there's this endless list of things that they've done. And I looked at that and I just gone, that's brilliant. But you know, how do we measure any of this? You know, we're kind of measuring who's got the most initiatives. You know, as opposed to what's changing. And as Gideon said, we spoke yesterday, you know, the all-in survey will hopefully give us some real data. We've only got one data point, right? The IPA agency survey is the only data point we have in this industry, which tells us 14% of the makeup of the agencies is from an ethnic background. Now, most agencies are in London. London's 40% BAME, you know, so we don't really represent the community we live in, you know, so that's a problem. I think, you know, the thing for me is I'm really excited about the data piece, but I think, you know, Lucy said we shouldn't be talking about the business reasons, but I think we've got to hammer them on, right? So I always kind of talk about three things. Change in population, right? Everyone currently, we haven't had a census for like 10 years, so everyone feels we're about 15% of the UK population in terms of BAME, right? By 2050, the UK is predicted to be the most ethnic diverse country. Be like 38% of the population is going to be from a BAME background, right? If this industry isn't thinking about that, that's customers, right? How are we going to reach our customers if we don't think and look like them, right? So I think for me, and probably our clients, you know, so we're going to be getting it from both ends. So I think for me, it's just, you know, it's changing. And, you know, some of you might be going, oh God, 30 years, it's a long time. I've been in the industry for 30 years. It's not that long. I remember starting, really. So for me, that's like a real change. I think the second thing, and it's lovely having Lucy and Shani in, but, you know, millennials think very differently about D&I, right? I think the stat is something like 47% of them think that D&I in a company is a real reason for going to a company. So if you don't have D&I, and this is not only for Black and Asians, white people think the same way, you know, so they are demanding companies get their act together and become more diverse, you know. So if companies don't do it, you know what, they're just not going to get the talent, you know. So you've got future customers, you've got future talent. These are the leaders of tomorrow. And lastly, as I think Lucy said, you know, whatever it is, the McKinsey survey, there are 3 surveys now on diversity. They're all free. Go online and read them. I think it's something like 37% improvement in performance on companies in the top quartile of diversity, right? You know, it's all there. So there are lots of business reasons. I think we've got to just focus on the positives, the business reasons. But I think there are the moral reasons. You know, the numbers, you know, unemployment in the UK is 5%, whites 4.5%, non-whites 8.5%. Now you might go, oh, that's around what are you going on? It's 3%. It's almost double, you know, so, you know, unemployment rates. And then you go the wage gap, you know, I think Bangladeshis and Pakistani communities have a 20% lower pay gap on income. I mean, you know, we shouldn't be there. And I think a number of businesses, sometimes I go in there and they go, you know, is this our problem? I'm like, who's going to solve this?
Yeah.
You know, it's not companies who are going to solve the issue around employment and wages. Who the hell is, you know? Yeah. So I think it's around, you know, sorry, I've been rambling on a bit, but I think we've got to kind of definitely big up the companies who are doing good work, but we've got to continue to give them reasons for doing it, really, and just continue to shout.
Yeah. Thanks, Naren. I think, you know, your whole piece about, as an advertising industry, we should be reflecting the society out there. And we're definitely not in how we're recruiting. We're definitely not in what we're visualizing on screen in a lot of the cases. And there's a huge amount of stuff to do. But you're right. I think getting a balance between applauding those people who are doing good, but also making sure it's more than a, we won't say it's in campaign, it's obviously in the drum, a bad news story in the drum. I think we need to make sure we are driving the conversation more than we currently are. And Gideon, you didn't think you'd get a scoop about Naren's 50 years in the industry you talked about earlier. So that I think will be on page in the mag tomorrow. We've got some questions coming through, which is brilliant. So we're going to spend 15 minutes trying to get through as many of these as we can. So thanks, very engaged today. Lucy, I'm going to come to you on this. So I think we've had this come up a couple of times before on this session. So we might need to think about having a bit more of a focus on it just on our next webinar. But businesses or employers who currently do not see it as a focus, who currently are unwilling to discuss D&I, don't really understand that it's something that they need to help their teams on. What do how do people go to drive that change from within? It's definitely something we've talked about before, but it must be so demoralizing and difficult if you're stuck in that place.
First of all, I would say really reconsider if you want to be working for an employer that doesn't put this on the agenda. It's a shame that we have to discuss this, but this is where we are, we're discussing it. But yeah, that would be my first point. Reconsider what your next move is. Don't waste your energy forcing your employer to think it's important. Secondly, as Naren said, there is data and resources everywhere. Read. You only need to go on the internet to look at the benefits of having a diverse workforce. Now, one thing I do want to highlight is that, and I mentioned it before, going out with a fishing net and scooping up a group of diverse people and employing them will not make you effective. Having a more diverse workforce in itself will not make you effective. Companies need to take it that step further. So they need to embrace the cultural differences. They need to learn from, if there's an underrepresented group in the company doing something different and it's working, why is it working? Learn and share, develop as a company. Also, the powers that be, look at the power structure. It's all well and nice employing a diverse group of junior members of staff, but how are you going to fast track them so they're at the top? We need to really, I guess in answer to your question first, read. The information's out there. You can spend, it depends where you want to focus your energy. Do you want to focus your energy trying to win over an employer that doesn't care, or go and flock to the company that really does put that high on the agenda? The companies that do think it's important will flourish. As Shani said, they're future-proofing themselves. Go to where the future is and future-proof your own career.
Yeah, Liam, just to pop in, I think, we're seeing things change, so already you've got the pension funds and the big investment houses kind of saying they're only going to invest in companies which have diverse talent on their boards, I know there are already a couple of companies who are asking for diversity statements, before they spend their media dollars with different companies, and I think that pressure will come. It's just about when, I think. So, but I think companies are waking up to it. Not everyone's going to do it, and I just think, I think people need to vote with their feet. Not now because we're in tough times, but if your company doesn't care about this, I mean, you need to go work somewhere else.
Yeah, I hear that, Naren. I guess it's hard at the moment with so many people being made redundant. You're kind of sitting there with a job. It's really, really difficult. But I do agree. If you're not getting on, if you're not enjoying it, you're committing a lot of time to that business, and they're not looking out for you. But yeah, very tough one. We've had a question come in, and I think it's really interesting. So in a business like ours, I'd say we've got a really great culture. We've got a lot of brilliant initiatives, and we do try and measure stuff. But last year we even heard in our own organizations things like microaggressions or discrimination that people have faced, which opened our eyes, right? And Gideon, there's a bit of a question here for you around some kind of regular editorial feature or something that we could have in campaign or media week where people I'm trying to get the balance right. So the question explicitly talks about sharing stories about discrimination or microaggressions anonymously. That sounds like quite a dark thing, a sad thing to read. So I guess you'd have to have a flip on it. But what's your thoughts on some kind of regular feature or something similar to that?
It's a difficult one, actually. The direct answer to the question is this is an important subject and it should get talked about. And I also have spoken to people who have been championing aspects of diversity and inclusion and received a lot of hostility, some of it microaggressions and some of it public, in on social platforms. And I think it's a big issue. I'm not trying to sit on the fence here. I'm making it a regular feature. The only thing I worry about is, would it be negative in the long term? In other words, I'd be more interested in what good looks like or what better looks like. In fact, someone was asking a question about that in the chat about what, so the short answer is yes. I think people need to hear that things are, it's not easy. This is a difficult subject because you often hear it when you confront people about this. There's some people who are resistant to change. Yeah,
I hear that. I think anything that we can do to help educate and help people understand how to deal with those kind of microaggressions, and how to, the question earlier about what to do if you're in an organization that won't change. I think thinking about how we help educate on that, I think is critical. Shani, we've got a question here from Sarps, and it comes out in a few of the questions we're having. And again, it's organizations at one end are talking about doing some really big, bold, impactful stuff, which we obviously applaud and has to happen. The question is around, is that lived experience for people of color in those organizations? It doesn't necessarily feel like it matches that promise. And I guess the question I've got, Shani, is that a case of those two things having to catch up with one another? Or is it that some of it is just shiny stuff going on here, and the reality of the day job is not necessarily feeling like that? I hope not, but what's your take on that?
I mean, I think it's a few things, to be honest. It kind of goes back to what I said about people thinking that they're like one size fits all. So, that whole thinking, if we launch this program or if we put this fund in, then the problems are fixed. But ultimately, what your employers are doing, they're trying to find a quick fix to something that's been happening for a long time. And what the employees are feeling is ultimately trauma. Do you know what I mean? Because if you've worked in a space, imagine you've worked in a space for 7 to 8 years, 6 years, a year even, and you've been experiencing microaggressions on a daily, you passive aggressiveness, you constantly feel like you have to shy away from who you really are. You don't really know how to confront your boss when something happens. You don't trust HR. And then all of a sudden, your company's like, okay, guys, we're here to change that. And then all these changes, quote unquote, you see being talked about in publications. People have gone out, the MD's gone out and gave a little interview and said, I'm so proud of this. But then you're still feeling that right there is that, well, I would say is going back to what Lucy said, like, do you still want to work there? Because what they should be doing is starting from where they're at, speaking to their employees who are currently there and say, what do we need to do to help you and support you? Because it's not going to be a package. Not everyone's going to say therapy. Not everyone's going to say a day off. Not everyone's going to say not everyone's going to say that. People are going to say different things. And what that's going to take is time, resource, money. Feelings are going to get hurt. And ultimately, business do not want to invest all of that. They don't want to do it. And when you see those real changes start to happen, sometimes it's kind of like it goes up before it goes down before it comes up. They're going to lose some employers. They're probably going to even lose some staff. They might even lose some clients, because what they're doing is a restructure. They're starting again, and they're saying, this is now what we stand for, and we are not tolerating certain behaviors, certain things that are happening within our space, and this is how we are going to move forward. And not everyone is going to be on that boat. Do you know what I mean? And that's when you'll start to really figure out if your company's for you or not, because they'll be willing to take those type of risks. So like I said, you need to ask yourself, what can I really see is happening? Because if you're still feeling those things that, this doesn't sit right with me, they're putting the diversity juniors on the page, but no one really has a say in the organization, and I don't know if I should be, they've launched this internship program and that, they've signed up for this, but I still don't really feel, then that means your organization is not doing the right thing and you need to move. You know what I mean? Because although they are making changes, those changes are not good enough.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I guess it's probably the case that businesses of different sizes, I think, if you're in a company that's 1,000 people, and there might be this like really radical, brilliant team trying to put together this, this new inclusivity changes and initiatives, but you're still over here, you're one of the 980 people. You're not going to feel like you're part of that journey. So I think, again, in a company of our size, we're 200, probably still underestimate the amount of bringing everyone along on that journey with you, so that you don't end up with that pulling apart, which goes, you're saying this, but I'm feeling that. I think that's,
and I think, and I just want to say as well, like, this does take time. So I'm not saying you ain't seen the difference in 2 days, so bounce. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that if you don't feel safe enough to voice how you're feeling, and if you don't then see action off the back of you voicing those things, and if you don't then see actual structural change happening, then that's when you need to start questioning things. So I put on LinkedIn the other day, it's been 8 months since Adlan's response, and I haven't really seen anything. And I think 8 months is enough time to sort of start to make real structural change. But yeah, I'm still having conversations with people about the same frustrations, people in my DMs telling me, and it's like, well, now's your time to start questioning, because 8 months is enough time for people to really say, okay, actually, is this the place for me? Do I feel safe here? Because we've been having these conversations. So I think it's also like, obviously everyone's patience and tolerance is different, but you also have to just be able to read the room too.
Yeah, I hear you, and I totally agree with all of that. I think one of the things we've seen a lot of questions on is around the data. And Naren, I know you're a bit of a numbers man, so I guess there's a few questions that are coming through around exactly how that pay gap is calculated, and is it like for like within the whole company, with a number of company, how is that done? And I guess probably moreover is, how do you make sure that data's right? How do you make sure that it's filled in by everybody, not just HR people? I don't think working in people in HR, you're not going to manipulate those figures. You're going to put in the right figures, right? But talk to me about the data a bit more, Naren.
I mean, I've got to say, there's nothing scientific about it. If you go into Google and hit, pay gap, white versus non-white, there's a whole bunch of ONS government studies all about it. It's all there. It's all online and really easy to find. It generally is median income. Once we have the survey, this is the national survey, which is happening this year, we'll get much more accurate data. But this is all stuff that's basically provided to the House of Commons or to government. So it's there. And I think, one of the key things I've learned about D&I, and I've only become an expert over the last year because of what happened. I wouldn't even say I'm an expert. I just probably know more than most people. Is unless you've got research to back it up, you can't have a conversation which is just based on how you're feeling. And that's why I think research, numbers, it's all there, and companies are aware of this because HR officers and CEOs are looking at it. But just honestly, spend 20 minutes, Google it, and you'll find everything you need to know on unemployment rates, pay gaps, different ethnic groups, these are the reasons that'll hopefully give you some sort of moral responsibility to change it, really.
Thanks, Naren. So I'm conscious of time. We've probably got time for a couple more questions before we hear from Sharon and the initiative, which, funnily enough, is going to talk quite a lot to the data. But Gideon, just coming to you, I think it was Helen that asked a question here. So what are you, and imagine you get a press release an hour a day about things that businesses are doing in advertising to address some of these points. Is there anything that you've seen that you're like, I can see that will make a huge difference, or I can see that will create some impact? So I guess the follow through we've talked about on this today already, but what are the things that you're seeing coming through that really raise an eyebrow?
Well, if you mean raise an eyebrow in a positive way, Boots, they just had their review, the pitch for actually a sort of whole holding company relationship. They said the diversity of the agency teams was a scoring criterion, right? So I thought that was interesting and positive, and they said it was a new thing for them. That's Walgreens Boots Alliance. Yeah. I mean, Unilever has said that they are taking active steps. I don't know if they're actually putting public targets on greater representation in front of the camera and behind the camera. Channel 4 has been making quite a lot of effort, and they are also talking not only about improving representation in their organization, but also auditing their supply chain. everyone's got a part to play.
Yeah.
And I think they're examples of where I think at least there's a willingness to change. But I'd like to hear examples from other people, because there's so much I don't know.
Yeah. Anyone on the panel have something that they've seen and go, yes, that is, you're saying it's being effective. Does anyone want to bring an example to life?
I don't. Nothing springs to mind like immediately. However, I think people that I think do interesting stuff in order to bring talent into the business is, I was really impressed by the Converse All Stars community that they've been building across the world, where it's like exclusively young people working on briefs with different people, and they're not employers of Converse, but they've allowed them to sort of embed them into the community, which allows a new way of seeing talent and working with talent and making them feel like they are valued in that way, which I just think is interesting.
Yeah.
And I also think kind of like what I said is that starting here to go up is the Lloyds, when they admitted that there was a disparity in there, that I think that probably would have shook a lot of heads. And sometimes I think you have to start there in order to then create the change. And I think that was pretty brave. So, yeah.
Liam, I think the thing for me is, our jobs, whether you're a media or an agency, or, our kind of future is dependent on growing and winning business, and I think Gideon's, kindly let me chair some of the awards in the past, judge the awards, and you just see the quality of work that people put in to winning business, right? And I kind of just go, if only you put the same energy into being more diverse, we could do it, because that's the biggest thing. The question, we don't get enough CVs, right? You don't get any clients calling you saying, "Hey, would you like my business?" So if we can have companies create such amazing work, whether it's creative, whether it's media plans, whether it's media owners coming up with incredible solutions, that win awards or leave us in awe. Why can't we as an industry tackle this problem? I mean, it's just, if our business is dependent on it, we'd all do it. And I think for me, I think it's just about effort. It's hard, but
exactly.
This is hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more, actually. And what all of you have said today absolutely strikes true. And I think if it is just about effort, then why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing more quicker? And I think measuring that and all of that is going to be absolutely fundamental. Naren, you touched on it a little bit. I think one of the things we do as Media for All, one of the things we need to do more, I should say, is the industry is not really known. People don't. I didn't know what media was before I ended up here. It's not what I thought I'd end up doing. But I think no one looks at it and goes, yeah, that's where I want my son to go. That's where I want my daughter to go. And I think we need to do more to make the industry, people more knowledgeable about what it is we do and the opportunity once you get here. The reason they don't is because it's been an industry where, it's your mate or your person. Everyone lives in the M25 because they can afford to, because they come from rich middle class houses. I mean, we've just got to completely flip it and change the story and change the narrative. Who else? I think there's a couple of questions we've not quite got to, but look, we're going to do a few things this year. We're going to launch a podcast. I've said it now to 100 people, so we've got to do it. We're going to have short form content. We're going to have a few more different formats like fireside chats. So we're going to get through a lot more topics and have a lot more interesting chats like this across the year. So I think I'm going to end it there. I just said at the very start, for those people who didn't join at the start, we've got Sharon from the Ad Association here, who Sharon's just going to talk a little bit about the new initiative that the guys launched today. Hello there.
I'll mute myself. I've been hiding behind a curtain, it feels like. I don't know how long I've got. Have I got like 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's good. 2 or 3 minutes is perfect.
Perfect, because I'm hoping I'll cover everything, but might answer some of the questions that came up in the chat as well. Thanks so much for having us, for this last bit of the session. It was really interesting to hear what you've all had to say. Apologies if I might start speed talking, because I've been on coffee since 7:30 this morning. We had our annual conference. It started at 7:30, 8 o'clock. and then the launch of the all-in census at lunchtime today. So it's literally hot off the press, sharing it with you all today. I won't go without sharing the sort of branding. I'll just do a screen share at the end. But this is a culmination of about a year's worth of work with the AA, the IPA and ISBA. It's a first of its kind. So the industry has never had a census that's tracked all the individuals that work in it before. We know from ONS data that's around 300,000 people in the UK. As I say, the germ of the idea came before the pandemic, actually, and certainly before the George Floyd's murder and BLM and all the things that happened last year. And we almost put a pause on it, but actually those things have just given it momentum and made it even more important for all the reasons the speakers have spoken about today. So what we've done is create a stop the clock moment on March the 10th for All In. It's a one-day only sort of window for the census, and we did that because there's a lot of survey fatigue. So it's a sort of practical element to try and get everybody's data in one day. But it's also, I like to think of it as sort of the intent of the whole industry getting together, downing tools and committing to giving 20 minutes to their staff to fill it in. So that's the other bit that's the first of its kind, because it's not collecting data at company level. It's being, every individual that works in the industry, everybody that's got an advertising role will be asked to fill this in. It's not mandatory. It's very much, we want to create a movement from today. So the campaign launched on social, in trade media. Thank you so much, Gideon, for your support on that. It's really a collective effort of the industry to just talk about it, shout that they're in, we're in, kind of just, as I say, build the momentum so that everybody on that day is ready to do it. It's sensitive data. So again, it's something that, so we had questions this week about whether or not, where does it sit against the IPA agency census that Naren talked about earlier. Obviously, they've been tracking age, ethnicity, gender since the 60s. But again, it was at company level. This is going out to the individuals, so we'll be tracking and asking questions that no one's asked our workforce before. So certainly companies won't have this data. And it's all 9 protected characteristics and other things. So things like discrimination, I know came up in the chat. We're asking individuals who you are and how you identify and what's your experience at work. So there's sort of 30 odd questions over the 20 minutes, and they really do cover, everything from age, gender, position, salary, ethnicity, disability, neurodiversity, caring responsibilities, and then going on to experiences about, your workplace. So if you've been discriminated against, what the company culture is like, do you have a feeling of belonging? All those things that we want to create to get our house in order, really. That comes back to the point many of us have made today. How do you attract talent, diverse talent into an industry when to date it's been very much kind of who you knew and not necessarily even on people's radars. And we're not going to do that successfully until we get our house in order. So, it's a huge welcome to so much of the industry. We've had incredible response today. So sorry if I'm a bit all over the place. I've been literally filling in LinkedIn and emails from people saying, as people have in the chat today, this is really welcome. The timing couldn't be better. And I genuinely think the pandemic's almost offered us a bit of a gift. The chaos and drama and awfulness that we've had in the last 12 months, that there is some light. There's a flip side to that, which is it's really garnered, I think, everybody's energy, focus, commitment around something like this. We all want to work in a place that we feel we belong. And, from a personal point of view, I've been sort of faking it to make it for at least 36 years since I joined the industry at 18, moved here from Scotland, no university, state school, funny accent, and, just sort of had managed to claw my way through for all of these years. And so it's a welcome relief to see that actually there'll be some hard evidence and some data within the next couple of months that we can share. And start benchmarking. So the important thing to say is that after March 10, we're going to launch the findings in a report, the all-in report, and it'll have an action plan as well. So it's all driven by intent and not just words, as we've already seen in the comments today.
Brilliant.
So I hope that covers some of it. I mean, the logistics are, once your company, your organisation has confirmed their commitment to be all in, we will send you a link on the day. So the leader of that organisation will get a link to sort of cascade with their staff. It will also appear on our website, and that will be well branded over the next few weeks as a live link on the day. So if you're not currently working, or circumstances mean that you haven't been sent the link by your leadership team, then you can fill it in yourself. So hopefully that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think.
And I'll try and do a screen share while you're talking.
Thank
oh no,
you.
it's disabled. It's disabled.
Oh, sorry. But what we'll do, we'll make sure that everybody who registered today, nearly 200 people, we'll make sure that they all get sent the link and all the assets that you shared with me, Sharon, and we'll follow up on our MEFA website as well. I think it's super exciting. I think we'll be calling out those companies that don't say that they're all in, and we're wondering why.
Oh, yes. Well, can I give a shout out to some who are in already?
Very quickly.
Okay. Sky, ITV, Publicist Group, Omnicom Media.
7 stars.
7 stars, sorry, Liam, 7 stars. Yeah, absolutely. But
awesome.
Yeah, please sign up. But the doors are open now, so.
Brilliant, thank you. We've all been asking for data, and I think that's definitely going to give us some to measure and start tracking that change that we all want to see. So that's it from us this month for now in this long format that we're doing. Just wanted to say so many thanks, and the comments from people coming through are amazing. So Shani, Gideon, Lucy, Naren, Sharon, I think everybody's been really excited and energized. I always come off of these feeling really energized by the chat you guys have brought today. So thank you for bringing yourselves to it, and it's been awesome to hear. As I say, look out for more from Media for All. We're really stepping it up this year. Naren's got his foot on the pedal, so there's a lot more to come from us across 2021. We're really excited. We're going to be doing a MEFA Matters on tour. So if your organisation wants one of our 150 MEFA mentors to turn up and do a Media for All, a MEFA Matters for your business. We've done one at the 7 Stars, we've done one at Global. Get in touch with me, and we're working on how we can bring those out and get on the road with some of them across a year. So I think that's it really. Let's really try and nail 2021. It's really difficult at the moment for a lot of people. People are stressed, people are working from home. There's not great stuff happening in the news, but stick with it and we'll definitely get through it all. And thank you very much for turning up, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers team, thank you.
See you guys. Great job, Liam.
Thanks, Naren. Cheers, mate.